Hello and welcome to another episode of So What Do You Actually Do? In today's episode, we got the chance to talk with Ahmed, who works as a data scientist for Amazon Web Services, AWS for short. Ahmed got his bachelor's from Virginia Tech in Systems and Industrial Engineering. Later on, he got his master's from Georgia Tech in Computer Science. In this episode, Ahmed describes what data science is, the use of computer coding, math, to make sense of complex data so stakeholders can make action plans for their growth. Please stick till the end to learn more about Ahmed's job. If you could explain in simple terms, what is data science all about and why is it important?
Yeah, so I think a data science position might be the hardest to explain in simple terms. At the core, it's essentially using math to help solve some business problem. Whether it's improving a product, introducing a new product, and different aspects like that.
Okay. Well, I guess this is the question of the channel. So what do you actually do?
Yeah, so data science is, I think, unique from other tech roles because the projects that we work on are more long-term projects. So depending on where in the cycle of the project you find yourself, the actual day-to-day could vary. So for example, if you're beginning like the exploratory work on a project, then in that time window, you'll find yourself meeting with a lot of people because you might be on a project that kind of touches different aspects of the business, or you might need to use different sources of data. And in the second time window, where it's kind of like the meat of the project, after you've kind of laid down an initial approach, this is where you're actually heads down in terms of building out the model that you initially hypothesize as being the correct approach to this problem. So a lot of the times that's coding in either Python for the majority of the time, depending on what you're familiar with. There's some that code in other languages like Java, but typically it's Python, especially for like research purposes, just because that's a pretty easy language. So that's more so like the middle window of projects. And then if you're working on wrapping up a project, that's typically when you'll be spending a lot of time writing. So it's like summarizing the results that you've seen in your experimentation. What's something that could potentially be researched further? How would this get implemented? So that's typically, there's three different kind of parts to it.
Thank you for that deep dive into this, what do you actually do part.
Yeah.
Now I want to jump into how is your typical day? How is your typical week? I know you mentioned your job is more project oriented. So if you want to describe that, compact it into maybe a week, and kind of if you can describe the work-life balance while you're describing how is a typical week.
Yeah, sure. So typically I start my day around 9 o'clock. Usually the mornings I reserve for, working through any sort of problem that requires a lot of thinking. So that's typically where I have, lists of things pertaining to the project that I want to have like heads down time and focus, whether that's diving into a data set, trying to see if what I'm doing in terms of my approach is correct, experimenting through either simulations or running different training sessions of the model to get myself results. A lot of that I save for the morning, and after that take my lunch. Again, that varies, but probably anywhere from like 30 minutes maybe to an hour if I'm getting lunch with a few coworkers. And then after that, the tail end of the day, that's typically when I have meetings. So there's different types of meetings. So my team, at least, we have like weekly meetings. And then for other projects that are ongoing, so models that we're currently using and then researching more on, those could also have their meetings in the afternoon. So the afternoon, depending on the day, is kind of scattered with meetings. And if there's big enough blocks to kind of work out time to be heads down, that's typically what I do. But usually if I have any sort of writing that I need to get done, whether it's like summarizing results, needing to kind of set up my next list of things that I want to look at. That's typically what I'll do towards the end of the day, just kind of get a basis for where I'm at. So that's typically the end of the day.
That makes sense. I'm guessing I was gonna ask you what skills are needed for the job, and I feel like the first one that's glaring is patience. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely say patience, and then also being curious and being able to learn about new modeling approaches and then see if they're applicable. Just because after you get your master's degree, you don't stop learning there. Like if something new comes out that might potentially help solve the problem better than what's currently implemented, you'll have to go and research that and see if it's applicable and to what degree.
Okay, that's fair. One last question. How much does someone like you in this part of your career gets paid in data science?
If you're someone that does have a few years of experience, you could expect to make into like the higher six figures. And then from there, it'll largely depend on if you're at one of the bigger companies or if you're, let's say, at a startup, you could be earning lower six figures, but getting more in terms of like equity into like the future success of the business. But in generally, I think mid six figures is probably something you should expect. And then it'll be either higher or lower depending on whatever like industry you go to and company.
Okay. I guess not so people get too excited when we're talking mid six figures. We're not talking about $500,000. We're talking 150K.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's cool to hear from you, giving us a kind of a snapshot of how does someone like you work at the AWS. And I hope that people that are listening are learn something. And again, we hope that everyone listening that can share it with those that are eager to learn more about data science. And if you want us to, I don't know if you want to be a resource, put you in the bottom of the YouTube channel. They can reach out to you if you want to, or they can reach out and we'll reach out to you as an option.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's a good conversation. And yeah, I could definitely share my LinkedIn. If anyone has any further questions, they can feel free to reach out.
All right. Well, thank you, Ahmed. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.